Hello everyone and welcome to a new edition of the XPRIMM Time for Business International show. Today we are happy to have with us Mrs. Sandra Schwarz. She is the President of Council of Bureau, or otherwise said, the head of the green card system at this moment. And we have invited her to tell us what novelties are, what the current status of the green card system it is in this moment. And of course, we will also talk about the impact of the crisis with Ukrainian refugees in Europe. Welcome, Sandra. Thank you very much for attending and for answering in a positive way to our invitation. What can you tell in general about the green card system, its current status? Are new entries expected or already done? Other exits? What's happening at this moment?
First of all, hello, and thank you very much for the invitation for this interview. It's really a pleasure. Yeah, what can I tell you? So let's say it's most probably not the biggest secrets of all that our system is facing a lot of challenges for the moment. Just think about the pandemic, even though from time to time you have the impression, come on, 2 years are more than enough. No, unfortunately, it does not work like this. So we are still under its influence. But anyhow, we can say that for our system, the pandemic was a challenge that we really very well reacted to. And we can say that really everything went very well. Because, you know, in all countries, all the people from one day to another had to go home and to work from home. And also this applied, of course, for all our members. And it worked. It really worked. It worked very, very well. So we can't say that this has caused problems for the system. We also have been faced with of course, with a decrease of figures of accidents due to the fact that the borders at a certain moment were closed, and afterwards the private travel, cross-border traffic was, let's say, more or less close to zero. On the other hand, finally, we find out that we had only a decrease about 30% or in all the figures, which perfectly shows that the commercial traffic, cross-border traffic, plays a tremendous role in our system and also in our daily work. And this, of course, has never been stopped at a certain moment during the pandemic. We also faced some insolvencies in our system in the last years. For example, the biggest one, I would say, was established in Romania. And here a big compliment to the colleagues from Romanian Bureau. Really, it is fantastic how you cope with this situation and how you are able to deal with all these different type of problems and also with this tremendous workload. So a big thank you in the name of this system. And what we have also seen, of course, so this is something where we, let's say, hoped that it will be a problem, a temporary problem. It was about sanctions. You know that we have some members, Iran is one of these examples, which are under a certain sanction regime. And this causes problem in questions of money transfer. Because if there is a sanction in place and you find a bank and you would like your bank to go for what they have to do to transfer the money, it could perfectly happen that they tell you, yeah, but sorry, we are not able to do it due to sanctions. Whether it's correct or not that they behave like they are behaving, it's a completely different question. But this is, of course, something which we also faced, and we faced it more and more during the last years, because more and more sanctions have been applied to certain members of the system. We have, of course, and this is now something which is so exceptional and horrible that we really can't say this is to be seen in line of all the challenges we have been faced in the past. And I was just describing, we have we are all confronted with the situation that Russian Federation started this aggression to the war in the Ukraine. And we have now one member bureau where we know our colleagues are under fire, our colleagues are in a situation where no human being ever should find himself. And in so far, this is really something which is very, very unique, and the first time personally for me that I experienced that our system is faced to such horrible things. And of course, we find ourselves in the middle of something where we can't say how it ends, we can't say when it will end, but what we can already state and say is that the colleagues from the Ukrainian Bureau do everything, and they really manage to do it to keep the system running. And if you imagine under which circumstances our colleagues are working for the moment, and they really have to cope all these different type of situations also they have never found themselves in before, and they still make it possible that you can contact them and they answer you as if nothing happens. This is something which is so fantastic. And if you see that even this is possible, then of course it is something which it's hard to believe, but yes, it is really correct and true. And so we can say even here, the cooperation with the Ukrainian Bureau under all these circumstances is still possible. And this is something which is really fantastic in my opinion. And it's something I really can hardly understand how this is possible, but it is possible. So and so far we really, you see, it's a number of different type, of course, and also different qualities of issues or problems we are facing for the moment. And still we can say our system is luckily a stable system, a good system, and in so far it continues to run and it continues to protect all these victims of traffic accidents finally and in the end. That's what we are implemented for, and that's our basic and main task. And this is a good news to some
system. It's really amazingly resilient, I would say, despite all these challenges. We will come back to this special situation at this moment a little bit later, but before that, I would like to ask you, would you say that we have returned to the pre-COVID crisis situation in terms of road traffic, I don't know, the financial implications, all that?
Not yet. So we still see that the numbers, they are increasing, but slowly. So it's not that we can say we already have the same situation as we had before the Corona crisis. And I'm not so much convinced that if we will, at the end of this year, then have the latest figures and have the latest, let's say, numbers of accidents all our members had to deal with, that we already find ourselves in the situation like we have been 3 years ago. So I would say that we still will see a continuous development within the next 2 years, of course, only if nothing else happens. So nobody knows how the pandemic will develop. And we all know in the meantime that autumn is worse than summertime in relation to the pandemic and to the question of variations and to the question of how is the impact on our societies in this regard. But for the moment, we are in a, I would say, positive, stable situation, so to say, because it is really visible that people restart to move. So this is something which is indeed a fact, but again, it is not really comparable already to the situation we had 3 years ago.
Okay, then one another question I would ask you to refer in particular to the CE region. Um, a couple of years ago, a representative of your institution stated in a presentation that some of the CE
Mm.
countries are real exporters of claims in the system, uh, saying in fact that the financial impact of the road accidents produced by cars registered in these countries is much larger as a share in the system than the share of their fleets in the total number of cars.
Mhm.
So what is the situation at this moment? Would you
Mhm.
say it remained like this, or?
Yes, yes, definitely yes. So of course, even our figures are not the figures of the moment; they are the figures of the last years. So it's always, of course, the, let's say, latest figures we have, but still we haven't seen that this switched. So it's roughly that we can say all the countries together have roughly 15% of the fleet, but they have to guarantee for more or less 45% of the claims. So you see there is a big difference if you compare it. So a very few number of vehicles seems to cause many cases of guarantee, which means accidents finally. But of course, it does not mean that the all the drivers are bad drivers or something like
Yeah.
this. It's just meaning that we see that the big part of the traffic really is originated from these countries, and so far it is like they are a bit the importers of the claims. But it's again, it's of course really linked simply to the fact that a high percentage of these vehicles, which are belonging to the national fleets, so to say, are really traveling abroad, whereas in other countries, you really see that most of the vehicles simply stay inside. So this is the real reason, and not the bad driving.
Yes, of course. Would you say that this might be also the result of the higher limits in the Western countries uh, of liability than in the many of the CE ones? And
Mm.
road accidents produced by Western drivers in the CE maybe have a lower outcome in financial terms. I don't know. It's just
Yeah,
a
yeah, of
possibility.
course, right. That's right. But it is indeed not about the let's say about the sums that finally had to be guaranteed. It's already about the number of accidents the bureaus had to guarantee. So finally, it's not that we say if we look at the amounts or cover amounts, that there we made this comparison or this relation between the numbers. It's already really the number of accidents itself, and in so far I don't see that there is immediate impact from the question on how are the minimum cover amounts, or how is cover of an insurance policy foreseen, or for which amounts it is foreseen. It is more than that. It's simply really the question of how many vehicles are starting to cross borders in order to be used, and so far this seems to be very typical for this region, that they are really very active. They move, and they are
Yes,
simply.
we like driving a lot
Yeah.
and long distances. Uh, Now, coming back to the hot topic of the moment, the
Yeah.
situation raised by the conflict in Ukraine. Uh, of course, the humanitarian drama is the most important thing, but besides this, there are also practical aspects in your activity that need a solution. First of all, I would like to ask you, does the council have approximate idea about the number of cars registered in Ukraine that are now on the European roads?
Yes and no. The problem is we, since the war started, we are in permanent contact with those countries who have a direct border and who have now, of course, on a daily basis, all these refugees entering via their borders, first of all, their countries. And there we have, let's say, roughly an overview about the numbers of refugees. But the question is, how can you then, from this number starting, let's say, deduct to the number of really vehicles which also are used then within the territory of these countries or within the territory of EEA? And this is a bit hard to say. So you can't make, I would say for the moment, a very reliable guess, because it is simply impossible to really estimate. It's we would say that most probably it's much more than 20,000, and most probably it's less for the moment than 200,000. But in between, it could be really every number between. You can simply make your free choice. It is impossible to say because it's also different. For example, the first days it was that you can say 10 persons, one vehicle. Then it more and more shift to trains and also buses. I mean, a bus is a vehicle, don't misunderstand me, but the bus, it's moving to the frontier. The people leaving the bus is returning. And then so far the people are there, the bus is no longer there. And so it was really a shift to these public transport, so to say, and more people came without their vehicles. And then so far, finally, we do not have the answer yet. But what we can definitely say is that we have, of course, a huge number of Ukrainian vehicles crossing now, not only in these bordering countries, but also, of course, already on the way, because there are so many Ukrainian citizens living already all over Europe, and of course they are going to see these relatives or friends, and they would like to go to them. And so far, for the moment, I would say across Europe, we of course have a big increase on the numbers.
In fact, I think across Europe there is an increased traffic in general, because also many cars registered in the Western countries are coming toward the borders with Ukraine to take over people and drive them back in the country. Also, I understand lately there is also an increased number of let's say, I couldn't call them refugees, but Russian people crossing to Finland or to other neighboring countries towards Europe, many of them also by car. So
yes.
overall,
it is correct. There is a lot of movement, and also these people leaving Russia, or escaping from Russia. Also, of course, for them, even though it's a different situation, no doubt, but also for them, finally, when we are now talking about our business, which always seems to be very bizarre, by the by, to talk about our business and to have a look on insurance cover, whereas really there are so many different problems, first of all, to be solved. But anyhow, so let's say the outcome or the result is most of the time very similar, because we either have vehicles which have insurance cover via the green card, or we have vehicles where there is no insurance cover when they tried to leave the one country and to enter the other one. And so far, all in all, we know that for the moment we have a huge number of uninsured vehicles also crossing in Europe, because it's you can say it's normal under these circumstances that no one, first of all, has a focus on insurance cover. I mean, can you imagine how could it work at the border when you say, yeah, come on, so now we all check your insurance cover first of all before you are allowed to enter our country. So this is something which does happen, but not always, and in each case. And again, I think it is much more than normal that it happens. And of course, we are already, all of us in our country, starting to think about solutions. And one of the, let's say, the first solution, the ad hoc solution, is of course the frontier insurance policy. It is foreseen for foreign vehicles in your country that otherwise are not insured and don't have a valid green card. And so far, this is, of course, the first choice. On the other hand, we also know frontier insurance as an initial idea, you can say, was not foreseen for such situations. So it is somehow that you can say, yes, of course, there is a solution, but the solution as such is not really matching with the current situation. And this is another type of problem that we are facing. And of course, if not we as green card bureaus, then we as guarantee funds, because we are members in the CLB, whether we are green card bureaus or whether we are guarantee funds. And uninsured driving, first of all, is part of the job of the guarantee funds. But of course, it is not yet really easy to decide who should take which part of claims, etc. And there are a lot of different ideas in different countries how to react on this situation. What is an initiative in most of the countries is that for the moment they decided with this frontier insurance as a really first step of help and support is just to issue these frontier insurance policies either for free or for a very small price, which means it is of course not the normal frontier insurance policy, but it is already something which you can also see as, let's say, as at least part of the help package everyone would like to give those people. And so far it is also, again, it's an initiative, and the initiative is for the moment linked to each member state or each state. But of course, there are already discussions, or the discussions have already started whether there should not be at least a European-wide solution, however it should look like.
In fact, this is what I was going to ask you anyway, because we have seen a lot of solidarity, of course, and it's absolutely normal. We have seen also very impressive, I would say, solidarity within the insurance world, with insurers in Poland providing for border insurance for free, or with the Motor Insurers Bureau in Czech Republic or in Slovakia deciding to cover for a month or two all the damages caused by Ukraine and uninsured cars in their countries. These things are very good and admirable, but I think on a longer term, a real solution will be needed, because even the cars that had green card insurance when entering our countries and other European countries may this may expire over the future months. And I assume that despite many Ukrainian insurers are striving to maintain their operations, still buying a green card from your original insurer in Ukraine, where the car is registered, will be not an easy process.
Yes,
Do you have some possible solutions in mind?
Yeah, so as you mentioned it, so and as I told you before, the Green Card Bureau in the Ukraine is still working, and this also applies for the insurance market. Whereas, of course, it is not so let's say a normal workflow, but they really all tried to do the best. And we still can say the insurance market, MTPL insurance market in the Ukraine is still there and it is still active. And insofar it is not excluded that someone who, for example, now driving to Europe or even to Moldova or to any other country outside Ukraine is able to contact still his or her insurance company and can ask for a green card. And this could work. I don't say it will work in each and every single case. This would be a bit too optimistic, but it is possible that it will still work. And we know that also these data, they still will be entered into the databases of the Ukrainian Bureau. So it is really a real, let's say, green card cover, and it is also a real guarantee that is behind these type of green cards. Whereas these green cards, and this is of course, let's say, different to what is written in papers or what is the real foreseen style and format of green cards, but we know it. Of course, it's not possible to send them as a paper, as a green paper in an envelope to those persons. No, these green cards will be sent via email or WhatsApp or however, but anyhow, they will be received on devices. And what we of course know is that officially, because the recommendation from UNECE was not yet changed, a green card is only a valid certificate and document if you have it printed. And this is a principle, and this principle is of course not forgotten, and it hasn't been changed so far. But as I said, this is an exceptional situation, and we need, of course, to be flexible. It is no doubt that these green cards will be guaranteed by the Ukrainian Bureau. So independent from what is written in papers, also if there is an accident and there is a Ukrainian green card, and this green card is not printed on a green paper, but it is, let's say, only presented on a device, it's still a valid green card, because the circumstances are like they are. But this is, let's say, really the first choice, so to say. For the rest, the question is, yeah, how could or can such a problem be coordinated? Because indeed, as you already mentioned, even with these policies, cheap or for free policies, we will postpone, but still meet at a certain moment the problem that after expiry, also these vehicles again are uninsured in terms of insurance. And so far, it is now really an ongoing discussion. It's not only a discussion in the COB, it's also a discussion in the Insurance Europe. Insurance Europe is the head organization of all European insurance companies, and MTPL insurance is also part of their business. And so far, it is absolutely logical that also they have already picked up it. And yeah, so for the moment, we are in close contact with Insurance Europe, and we really try all together to find a very good solution, whereas unfortunately, until today, we haven't found this solution so far, because it's, again, you see, you have these different type of solutions in the markets. You have a common will in these markets to find a good solution, but how does it really look like the good solution that solve all these problems, let's say? This is the big question mark for the moment. And so far, also here, I'm afraid I can't already present you the solution that was found. But definitely there is many things going on, and so far we will find a good solution or the best solution to overcome this problem.
Well, all the admiration for the Ukrainian Bureau and for Ukrainian insurers, which despite all this dramatic situation are still working and still taking care of the interests of their customers. Hopefully, if I would have the opportunity to make a wish, I say that all this situation ends as fast as possible, so that in the end the solution, general solution, would be not necessary anymore. Now, just a moment, stop. What about the cooperation with the Russian bureau? Because of these sanctions, do they have an impact also on?
Yes, of course. So the problem for the moment is also that we find ourselves in the middle of processes. And the first question is how and in which ways is it still possible, even under the sanction regime that is in place, to make sure or to ensure that the Russian Bureau can fulfill its obligation as a member in the Council of Bureau. And of course, most of these type of questions is for the moment linked to the question of financial money transfer, etc. Questions. But of course, it is not the only question we as a system have to deal with. There is another question. It is simply the question of whether or not it is, for reputational reasons, feasible to have a member bureau, and this member bureau is situated in the Russian Federation. This is, let's say, the second question. If we only have a look into our rules, the answer is very clear. The only reason to suspend membership of a certain bureau in our system is that they are in breach of our rules. And here we can say we have to, first of all, analyze whether this is the case or not. And to be in breach of our rules would imply that, for example, the Russian bureau is no longer able to make payments towards all the other bureaus. It also, of course, implies the question whether we or the other bureaus are still able to make payments towards Russia. And due to the sanction regime, this is a question that seems to be very, very difficult to answer, because when it comes to sanctions, there are, first of all, the theoretical impacts. So what is written on paper and what is on paper the impact, but then you are also always confronted with the practical implications and the practical impact. And there, again, you will have banks where you can prove that this transfer action is still justified and it is not illegal, also not under the regime of sanctions. And on the other hand, the bank simply tells you, but the risk, in my opinion, is too high and I'm simply don't do what I, in theory, still could do. And so far, this is, of course, also the challenge to assess, okay, what is theoretical impact, what is practical impact, and how do we finally assess the overall situation? And this is what we, of course, are currently doing. We will have a meeting of our supervisory board in 12 days from today on, so more or less 2 weeks. At this meeting, then we hope that we will have, at least at that moment, the then current overview of the impact of sanctions. practical and theoretical, and then we hope that we can find good solutions, common positions, and also good decisions for our system, because we also always have to take into good consideration what does it mean? What does it, for example, mean if we will come to the conclusion that the Russian Bureau is no longer able to fulfill its member obligations? So then we will have to take consequences. It is logical that we are going to do it. And on the other hand, we also can't do it without knowing what we are doing in terms of consequences, which means we really have or we need to really have, first of all, as much information as we can gain within these time frames, because don't forget, you always read in the media, so I don't know, the United States or the European Commission, or both of them, they would like to imply new sanctions, and then you have new sanctions from the UK, etc. And then you read it in the media, but before it is officially published somewhere, you have 2 days, 3 days already again before it happens, and then you are again in the middle of nowhere, because and you have read and you have heard, okay, this sanction is like this, etc. But when you read it, you discover, media from time to time typical, so it's not exactly what they wrote. And in so far, we always try, of course, to have the best information and the most official information that we can get, but this implies a delay, because again, so you hear very often from time to time, the impression is even before they really made the final decision, there is already this rumor there will be another sanction, and it looks like this, and this bank is sanctioned, and this is not, and so on. So it is really not, let's say, it's nothing, again, where we can say these complex questions can be solved very easily or within a very short time frame.
Well, there is always also the fine print that is important from a legal point of view, but not necessarily for the media. So it arrives a little later. And of course, there is also your need of protecting the drivers or the eventual victims in the road accidents that are not at fault. And in the end, it doesn't count for them if the driver comes from a country or another, if the local bureau is active or not, the victim needs to be compensated.
Yes, that's let's say also something where you can now say it is our advantage or it is our disadvantage. But we as Council of Bureau are finally what we always call a technical organization. And you mentioned it. The core business is to protect road traffic accident victims. And you very correctly mentioned it. The victim is really to be protected, and it doesn't matter from his or her perspective where the tortfeasor is established, and the expectation is simply, okay, so you have a system, this system is already very, very big, and please protect me and protect my needs, etc., as a victim. And this is what I meant when I said we can't not only take into consideration all these sanction and impact of sanctions, we also always are really obliged to see which are the consequences of our decisions and which will be the consequences of possible next steps, and of course consequence on what we are doing and consequences for the victims. And also not only for victims, by the by, because also we have, of course, many people circulating somewhere outside the country, and even they need a certain type of safety that they are, because they took care about insurance cover via a green card, And we can't simply decide, okay, so forget about it tomorrow, it's your problem, it's no longer our problem. Also, this is unfair, and also this is not possible. Whereas again, it is really a situation where we really can't say it's so black and white, because it is also absolutely normal that this situation is full of emotions, political views, whatever we call it, but still it is absolutely clear that it's definitely not enough to always hide against this technical, approach. It's also impossible, and it would be very strange to do it, but it is hard in these times to find the right balance between the two approaches. The technical, which for sure we as an organization really have to follow and also to protect somehow, and on the other hand, not to focus so much on it that we don't see or not able to see that there is a wider perspective and also political influence. And again, I don't say politicians are going to call us and this is the political influence. So I really see it in a much wider context, but it is what it is. It is really most probably one of the toughest situation the system itself found itself. And on the other hand, I would say still, if we compare it to the situation of these people who are sitting there under fire, under suffering, losing relatives, losing fathers, mothers, whatever, children, I mean, then if you compare it to this situation, then our problems are, yeah, we will find solutions. So this is, I don't say it's easy to find solution, but really if you compare it, then it's very easy for us to find solutions, because our problems are really problems where we say they are there, they need to be solved, we need to talk about it, we need to discuss, but finally there is a solution, and then it is like it is. And this is completely different for someone who is in the moment in the Ukraine and really has no idea how to survive the next day.
Well, on this note, I'm sure that you will find the proper solutions, or you will do your best to find them. It's a inherent challenge for a system which is half business and half a safety net in the end for all those involved in the road traffic. Thank you very much, Sandra, for your presence. I hope we will hear from you soon again. Maybe if something important changes in the system, we will call you again to find the novelties. Until then, thank you all for your presence, for watching us. If you liked the interview and are willing to see others, please check your subscribe button on our YouTube channel, and we will be there with novelties and interesting guests for you. Thank you very much, and goodbye.